We just did a project that looked at gold and the financial system, and it seemed to indicate that the bonds will collapse. There's going to be a time, this is all just paper. We got like Japan owns something like 800 billion of US Treasury bonds, and China owns $1 trillion. And they've got these piles of bonds that they think is an asset, but it's really a liability because there's nothing to back it up.
Hey, Inspired Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers, it's John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in to another inspired conversation. And so often in our conversations, we look at things that have happened. Well, today we're going to look more at things that are still to happen. And so my guest today is a former TV news journalist with over 30 years of experience as an anchorman, reporter, and producer for ABC's KITV in Honolulu. But since the late 90s, his focus has shifted from reporting what has happened to viewing what is yet to come. For over 25 years, Dick Allgire has been a dedicated and highly respected remote viewer, trained under Glenn Wheaton of the Hawaii Remote Viewers Guild and serving as a certified instructor and vice president of the Guild. His work has been featured in peer-reviewed studies, international conferences, and countless published viewing sessions. In 2018, he founded Crypto Viewing, using remote viewing to explore cryptocurrencies and blockchain, long before most people understood what was coming. In 2023, he launched a future forecasting group to widen the scope, tapping into what lies ahead for civilization itself. Today, Dick Allgire is considered one of the most accurate and trusted civilian remote viewers in the world, and he's here to share what he's been seeing lately and what may be coming next. So please welcome with me, Dick Allgire. It's great to see you, sir.
John, it's good to see you. Always. This is going to be a fun conversation. I have no idea what we're going to talk about, but we'll go somewhere interesting, I'm sure.
Well, we have to turn the page because you and I almost got lost in talking about music and our pasts on stage and whatnot, and so we had to look at the clock and say, "Hey, we got to move forward here." But I see that beautiful Martin in the background. You told me you sang "Made in Thailand," in Thai, which is amazing, and then you recorded this also for YouTube. So somewhere we're going to play this clip to hear people hear you sing in Thai.
Made in Thailand and in Thai เราเก็บย้อนยงเก่าเรามีแต่ของดีๆมาท่องไทยก่อนสุโขทัยมาลบบุรีอยุธยาธนบุรีสมัยนี้เป็นกทม.
But Dick, you're known for showing, viewing, and telling people what might come in the future as a remote viewer. What has been something lately that kind of blew your mind that has already come to pass that you have viewed in a previous session?
Oh boy, there have been a lot. We do monthly events. So every month, like in the month of July, 5 of our viewers sit down and we go into our remote viewing state and we get images and we draw sketches and do descriptions of events that will be near future. So we publish these things in July, and then our subscribers watch for them and see them come to fruition in August, September, October. We had predicted a tsunami event, and there was just a tsunami event in Hawaii. That was a wild ride almost 1 week ago. The sirens started going off and they're like, oh, there's a tsunami coming. We did one where one of our other viewers said that there's going to be a news event with a man falling from like a scaffolding or a fence, something in a crowded place. And I said, this is going to be in a arena at a rock concert. And there's going to be a tragedy there that involves serious injury and death. And 3 days after we put that out, a man unfortunately tragically died at Wembley Stadium at a big concert. He fell. So we see little things like that. We we also look at bigger long-term events, particularly shifting of the economy, because we're in a transition to a new financial system, and we're going to see earth-shaking things happening with the economy. So some of the ones we've done recently, I just wrote them down. We did the Oracle at Delphi, which is not a future event. That is a past event, but that was a really interesting project. We did a project on wearable medical devices. If you've been watching the news, RFK Jr. said, we want all Americans to have a wearable medical device in 4 years. And our taskers who task these without the knowledge of the viewers looked at that one and said, what could go wrong there? Let's have the viewers look ahead on that. So we did that. We did the new chairman of the Federal Reserve System a month ago. And so we've got.
When you say the new chairman, the upcoming one?
Yeah, the upcoming. There's going to be a new chairman.
Okay, so there's so much to unpack here. What is the one that stood out to you that you want to share a little bit more about, that you can share more about?
The wearable medical devices
stood out to me too.
Let's do the Federal Reserve Chairman first. So, because since I put him out there, I think it would be unfair to your audience to like tease something and not deliver on it. So, we were given a blind tasking. All we're given is a set of letters and numbers like A1, B2, C3, D4, do your project. And we sit down and we do our little probes and get our sketches and get ideas, and we come back and report. And what we got was, this is going to be a man. So we don't know what it is. And later it's revealed to us after we present our data. They say, well, your target was near future event, the next chairman of the Federal Reserve. And let me correct myself. When I was a newscaster, I always wanted to do this. Whenever we say the Fed or the Federal Reserve, I always wanted to be on TV and say the Federal. No, it's the private bankers.
It's thank you.
Private bankers who make money out of nothing and charge us interest to use it. It is no part of the federal government.
It's as federal as Federal Express. That's how federal it is.
So there is no branch of U.S. government under which the Federal Reserve resides. It's not part of the Treasury Department. Congress doesn't have approval. Congress doesn't allocate funds. It's not part of the executive branch. It's not part of the federal government. It's a private bank. But they convince us to refer to it as the Fed. Oh, the Federal Reserve. So anyway, that's my little rant.
Oh, please. You're preaching to the choir. So I love it.
Well, that was one of the things that woke me up many years ago, was the great G. Edward Griffith. I'm sure you're familiar with him. But
oh, yes. Yeah. Yes.
So once that light bulb goes on, there's no looking back. So yeah, the Federal Reserve, it's a scam. They make money and they charge us to use it.
There was this famous clip, Alan Greenspan, who was on one of the big nightly news shows. And he was asked, and I forget by whom, but one of the big anchormen, you probably remember, and he was asked, what is the proper relationship between the chairman of the Federal Reserve and the president of the United States?
I'll give you the answer that they always give. This is the doublespeak answer. Well, the Federal Reserve needs to be independent. It's an independent branch. Of course, the president is allowed to appoint the chairman, but it's independent, and its independence is important. So that's the
he must have been. I think it was in the climate. I think it was under Bush. I think it was a little more. He said, frankly, the Fed is an independent agency. There's no other. He said, There's no agency of government that has the power to override our decisions. And then he said, frankly, the relationship doesn't matter. That was quite arrogant for him to say. That was interesting.
Yeah. Well, so we did this remote viewing, And turns out it was what we were looking at was who's going to be the next chairman of the Federal Reserve. And I can't remember I can remember the data that Edward Reardon, one of our other viewers, got, but there was a ton of data. But, important financial person, person well-connected. I said it was someone who was connected to the Vatican, who reports to like the Pope. And the person I drew looked like David Malpass, which is the former head of the World Bank, which would be a good choice. So it's funny how, since we did that viewing, the president just can't pick someone out of the blue. He has to pick someone that's on the board. Someone has to be on the board, and there were no vacancies. But just now, one of the members of the board, this lady, just resigned. So Trump is picking a new board of governors member, and that's who he's going to pick to be on the board. So, but what we saw in our data, specifically Edward Reardon, is that whoever comes in is going to clean house, is going to upend everything, is going to bring the hammer down, is going to fundamentally change it. So what our data seems to indicate is that Trump may upend the Federal Reserve by who he puts in. This is going to be something to really watch for, because it's going to happen pretty soon. There's a vacancy on the board. He's going to push Jerome Powell out, and Trump will get his own person in there. And I think, and this is not from remote viewing, this is from conversations with good sources that I have. We know that the financial system is changing. They may do away with the income tax, and they're going to go to cryptocurrencies, and they'll have a micro tax on every transaction. That's what I think is coming. But our data in the remote viewing was very powerful, well-connected person, high-level person is going to come in and upset the apple cart, like make major changes. So come back. We'll revisit this in a year and see if we were right.
Even logic tells me this has to happen in some way, shape, or form, given what the plans have been for so long. But you've specifically focused since 2018 on financial, the change in the financial system, and specifically cryptocurrency. So, for example, Europe is moving at a very fast pace to a CBDC, which is a central bank digital currency, and frankly, to me, a nightmare. It's a surveillance and control nightmare, programmable. Do you see a different path for the United States?
Okay, let me get to the what I think is one of the biggest, one of the most significant developments in world finances is what just went on in Rio with the BRICS nation. So the BRICS nation, Brazil, Russia, India, China, Indonesia, Turkey just joined them.
South Africa,
a bunch of countries. Since the end of World War II, we've been living under the Bretton Woods Agreement, which was the agreement. The United States had all the guns. They had all the nuclear weapons. They'd won World War II. It was the world dominant superpower. So with that was the ability to impose our financial system. Hey, you all are going to use the dollar for world trade. So the US dollar has been the basis of world trade. It's the world reserve currency. The BRICS nations are not too happy with that because the aforementioned private bankers, the central bankers that make this money out of nothing, they've just been printing more and more and more and more. And the inflation spreads around the world. So as the U.S. just makes dollars out of nothing and everybody has to use it, that means rice farmers in Thailand, people that living on minimum wage in Brazil and Indonesia or Vietnam or wherever, they've got to absorb the inflation of the U.S. dollar. And the BRICS nations are fed up with that. So they just decided that they're going to implement, and they did this with the assistance of the Bank for International Settlements. They're going to make a new bridge type currency. It's going to be a 1 unit central bank digital currency. It'll be a digital crypto token that will be issued by the BRICS countries, and it will be 40% backed with gold and 60% backed with all the currencies of the ruble, the yuan from China, India, rupee, all their currencies. So 40% gold, 60% their currencies, which explains why all these countries have been hoarding gold. They've been buying up gold.
Like crazy.
Banks have been buying up gold. And you look at gold, I remember when my wife and I were buying gold for $500 an ounce. And it's
good for you.
There you go. I remember when gold was $1,000 an ounce, and my wife said, keep buying, and it's going to go up. And it was $1,200. What's it today? $3,400. It's gonna be $5,000. Our analyst says by end of the year. Okay.
I'm even more excited about silver. Always have been, but it hasn't happened yet.
I've got some silver too. We've been waiting a long time for silver. Okay, so back to the BRICS. They're going to start doing trade amongst themselves using this unit that is backed by gold and their currencies. And they're going to withdraw from the SWIFT system, and they'll be conducting 40% of the world's GDP, using 40% of the world's population, using this new unit of exchange, which is not the US dollar. When that happens, we expect to see a bond crisis. That would be the US bonds crashing, and that will be the death of the dollar that we remote viewed 5-6 years ago. So things are happening fast, and that is not good news for people holding on to Federal Reserve notes. Silver, I have some silver, but I do think the financial system is going to go to cryptocurrency. I don't think you're going to be buying things on Amazon using silver.
No. This is more, it's an industrial metal. It's in high demand, underproduced every year. So there's that. But I feel like the price has been kept at unreasonable levels given the demand.
Because they just put out pieces of paper that represent the silver. JP Morgan puts out, they buy contracts, they buy and sell contracts. There's no silver behind it. So there's not enough silver to cover all the contracts. If people called in their contract and said, I want to cash it out, they won't give you silver. They'll give you US dollars, Federal Reserve notes. So that's the dirty little secret. Yeah, silver should be way more valuable than it is now.
So I got to get back to this, a viewing of yours 5-6 years ago, the dollar, the end of the dollar, which has been prophesized for quite a while, and it's logical too. And naturally, we assume that neither the government nor the Fed is unprepared for this move. This has been watched. This is one thing that the president was very emotional about in his previous statements when it comes to the threatening of the dollar. He goes really, sort of very hot-headed into these tweets. But what's going to be the answer to this?
Well, I've watched Trump's position change gradually, and it comes back to cryptos. In his first term, he said, I don't go with these cryptos. It's a scam. It's a Ponzi scheme. It's worthless. I like the US dollar. I'm going to stick with the US dollar. At that point, that's what he had to say, because they're rolling out a new financial system, and they're trying to do it in a organized, gradual fashion. If Trump would have come out in 2017, 2018 and said, yeah, the US dollar is, they're making that out of nothing. It's worthless. We're going to a new system. It would have crashed everything immediately. So he had to say, well, I don't like cryptos. I like the dollar. Now he's saying, well, we're going to get a crypto reserve. Yeah, we do see Bitcoin as a treasury asset. That's a key word, a treasury asset. So they're doing it gradually. They know what's coming. It's according to plan. It's according to script. Nothing happens just haphazardly. So, yeah.
when you said BRICS is doing it one way, Europe is doing it with the European Central Bank, and a sort of to me, the worst case scenario of what the digital currency could look like, almost. But what will be? Do you see it? The main issue that people are having with a move from a physical currency to a digital currency, in whichever way, is it's programmable, it's not private, everything is completely transparent, and basically whoever issues that digital currency can have complete control over its use.
Cryptocurrency was sold to the Patriot movement, people with our political bent, as, oh, we're overthrowing the bankers. This is your financial freedom. This is permissionless. It's peer-to-peer. It's borderless. And everybody, well, we're going to overthrow the bastards, using cryptocurrency. But it really is the main function is it's all on a ledger, and every transaction, everything you do is recorded and can be tracked. So I think the last thing you want to accept is a central bank digital currency. That is if you think the Federal Reserve note is bad, wait till you see how bad a central bank digital currency is, because they can turn it off and turn it on. They can monitor you, and if you say something they don't like, they'll make your money not work.
Or they only will make it work for whatever they deem is desirable for you to spend it on.
Well, they'll tell you, you've consumed too much cholesterol this month, you can't eat meat for the rest of the month. We're gonna you're allowed, your money will be allowed to buy tofu and quinoa. So there's that. What we saw in our remote viewing, and let me preface this by saying that remote viewing is not 100%, because remote viewing is pretty limited. You get some glimpses of things. It doesn't make you Nostradamus. I'm not an economist. Don't do any investments based on anything I say. I'm a retired TV reporter, and I have some moments as a remote viewer. We just did a project that looked at gold and the financial system, and it seemed to indicate that the bonds will collapse. There's going to be a time, this is all just paper. We got, like, Japan owns something like 800 billion of U.S. Treasury bonds, and China owns $1 trillion. And they've got these piles of bonds that they think is an asset, but it's really a liability because there's nothing to back it up. So if the BRICS were to go online and cut the U.S. dollar out from under us for the rest of the world, they would have to settle those bonds. In what we saw in our remote viewing was that there comes a time when the bonds go bad. Everybody's holding this paper, and the U.S. will say, okay, what we're going to do, or I don't know, the U.S., the bankers that run the U.S. will say, all right, we're going to cash this in at 20 cents on the dollar. If you've got $100 worth of bonds, you get $20. And the new thing that they're going to back it with will be backed with gold, silver, natural resources, that type of thing. Like there'll be a basket of things that will be tangible to back it up. The system, the dollar, the Bretton Woods system, the Jekyll Island experiment was only designed for about 100 years, and it's past time. So something's coming, and it's going to be interesting because we're going to live through it. Certainly you are. I'm getting old, but it's going to be exciting.
Aren't we really? I mean, to me, this decade is really the decade of the greatest and fastest transformation that anyone that's alive today probably has and will experience, at least in my perception. But when we turn the page, what our audience is really interested in and also concerned with is this rapid onset of technologies that are just, I mean, they're just coming at us from every direction. And you mentioned RFK Jr. talking about the wearables. What are we looking at in terms of freedom and sovereignty over our biology and the, proposed and pushed merger with technology on the other side? That's what's being pushed on the human family. What have you seen in viewing sessions around that?
Okay, a lot to unpack there, and we'll get to the wearable device. First of all, technology. Have you played with artificial intelligence any?
Yes, a lot of deep research in it, yeah.
We just stupid little things. Like I went on Grok. I told you I was writing a song. And so I was, just for fun, I said, I'm writing a blues progression in the key of A about my pedicurist. And I hit return by accident. I wasn't in it. It went instantly. All the lyrics came up. It wrote not a great song, but a decent set of lyrics, and told me this will be, in A, it'll go to F sharp minor. And, I'm like, wow. And it did that in about 2 seconds. We've been, so many things are going to be obsolete. People that analyze data, record data, accounting. We've been doing some accounting work. We put remote viewing sessions. Not all we did was take this is a remote viewing session where I've got sketches and words, and we take a PDF file, scan it in, and give that to AI and say, analyze this. And it will have two people in a podcast discuss everything I wrote and tell me what I was saying and what it means. I mean, it was so astounding. So this is coming so fast, and I don't think you can resist it. I think you've got to learn to live within the system. Okay. Which brings us to wearable implants. Not wearable implants. Wow, that was a Freudian slip. Wearable medical devices. RFK Jr. just said a few weeks ago that in order to make America healthy, everyone needs to have a wearable medical device that will monitor all the indices, all the aspects of their physical body. John, what you're doing on that one?
I have a finger. I have a finger for that one on each hand. Let me just tell you, that's what I have.
Okay. Now there could be benefits to it. We were doing the debriefing after we did the remote viewing, and one of the guys was working at a government agency in cubicles, and they were sitting there during the day, and they heard this weird beeping, like beep, beep, beep. They're going, wow, what is that beeping, And they're looking around, and they said, is somebody cell phone or what is that? And they didn't know what it was. It just kept beep, beep, beep. And there was a guy in a few cubicles over that had some kind of monitor, and he was having a medical emergency. He was there slumped over, like very significantly ill, and they got him help, and it probably saved his life. Now, on the bad part, what we saw in the remote viewing was that this is a control mechanism, that it's meant to monitor everything about humans and change not only their activity, but who they are and how they interact with the whole system. It was pretty dire stuff. So I wouldn't want to accept one of those.
when you see that, and I know in all those years of remote viewing, you see things that are disturbing or even painful to watch. And then I've seen you on a number of occasions. You come in and you present this publicly, and sort of with the intention of maybe we can diffuse this potential by creating awareness around it. How do you feel about this specific subject and our ability to diffuse this control intent, if you will?
Boy, that's a big question. I don't. Our view at Future Forecasting Group, and it's not palatable to a lot of people who think that they're going to stand up for their quote freedom, is that we're in a system and we have very little control over it. So what you need to do is learn how to thrive within the system, interact with your family and friends, and be in a financial position where you don't have to. What they're setting up, you can see this happening. If you look at that Mamdani guy, Mamdani in New York, in AOC.
Oh, yeah.
They're selling communism to these people. And you look at the young people today, people just coming out of college, or people, in their teens and 20s, that are working at what used to be a decent job with a decent income. They can't afford rent. They can't afford to go out and eat at a restaurant, and they have no hope for the future that they're ever going to get ahead. So they're ripe for accepting a universal basic income, a tiny home. I think they're trying to steer some of them toward that. Like, okay, I don't need to working a 40-hour week. That's horrible. That's too much of my time. Like, I just want a universal basic income and get in a tiny home and I play video games. And I think a certain segment of the population will be steered toward that. You want to be a person who has assets, who has means, who can go out and do things, think your own thoughts, and being well off. There's a freedom to that. I did well with cryptocurrencies. I'm not offering financial advice, but we're at a time when this system is going to switch over and there's going to be so much money pouring into cryptocurrencies. It's a chance to make, like, if you would have invested in Microsoft in the 80s, if you would have invested in Apple in the 90s, Tesla, Google, all these things. So that's where we're coming from, is the system is changing. You're not going to be able to really fight it. So learn to thrive within it.
What is your view on people and communities, and this is happening probably at a bigger rate than people realize, that are beginning to look outside of the system, that are building micro communities, that are becoming self-sustainable, and that don't want to be a part of this? Do you see that there is a possibility for these two to coexist?
Well, I would love to live in such a community. I mean, I would probably love being your neighbor and people of your, same political views. I think we would get along well, and I would hope that would be possible. I would certainly, I'd like to have all my neighbors be freedom-loving patriots.
Same here. It should be a no-brainer.
You look in their eyes, you look at their skin tone, you talk with them and interact with them. They still have that spark of life. And I unfortunately, man, you see some of these other people on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, and they look, with the nose rings and the colored hair, and there's something off about them. So,
at a certain point, it seems to be a self-mutilation that goes beyond expression. It goes beyond, I want to express myself, to I'm mutilating myself. And I think it's a much bigger conversation, multi-generational trauma and so many things that have happened in our world. But
okay. One of the things that I want to do with my I'm making some money in cryptos. I want to buy some land in Hawaii, and I have a friend who needs some help, and I want to. He can grow anything. He grows food like no. He lives in an apartment, and in one little strip of land, he's growing bananas and papayas. Make a sustainable community there. I've talked with, there's a guy, I don't know if you ever talked with him, Will Lair of Unbound Assets. He does, he's down in El Salvador now, and he says there's a thriving community down there, but he helped a lot of people move their 401ks to a self-directed IRA in cryptos. And those people are all well off now. And we're talking about how can we team together to do something good for humanity in terms of, the values that we share. So there's that. What I want to do is I'm going to make a foundation, and I'm put you on the board of directors of the musical side of the foundation. Then I'll fly you to Hawaii, and we can write a song together. I'll do that.
Sounds like a great plan. I'll tell you.
It'll be a tax write-off for me because you're on the board of directors and we have to have a face-to-face meeting. So keep that in mind.
I agree with you. What else would it be than a tax write-off? Of course. But you mentioned something, and this is so dear to our hearts, is these communities, and they are really emerging, and they're emerging in a quiet way. When you know where to look, they're there. But there's another thing emerging outside of the dog-eat-dog capitalism world, which is sort of what we call the consciousness economy. People that are guided by higher principles and do not sacrifice them for sheer profit, and still they thrive. And I think this is also a new way of thinking, which sort of leads me to this question: do you also see, and this is the ominous 2030 date that's been put out there, the Great Reset date and all of that. Do you see that the next 5 years, and have you seen this in your sessions, are in some way, shape, or form instrumental, and what we do and how we react is instrumental?
That's probably too big of a question to answer through remote viewing. Like I said, we're not omniscient, but these communities are popping up. I'll give you Will Lair's contact information. You should do a segment with him because he's got people down in El Salvador that are going down there and they're buying. You can get really nice property in the beach or the jungle, and they're buying adjacent lands, and they're doing just what you're describing. They're freedom-loving people that are making a thriving community. I'd like to, of such places in the U.S. Well, Tennessee, of course. I'm sure there's some people there.
Dick, there's so many people in the last years, even in our audience, that have listened and watched and prayed and thought about these things, and eventually go, okay, we're selling our house or our apartment in the city or in the suburb. We're buying a piece of land, and coincidentally, we find out that our neighbors out there are also sort of self-sustainable minded, and they just start building it. They're not waiting for someone else to make it happen or build a structure. They're just starting to do it. And it's becoming something that is estimated to be 1 to potentially 3% of the world's population in the next 5 years. So that's a significant.
That's good.
That's significant.
When the tsunami came last week, and we did have a tsunami, it wasn't destructive, but it came, and so the sirens went off. When I lived in my previous location, I had food, water, batteries. I mean, I wasn't a super prepper, but I could have lived a couple months without having to go to the store. There was one time we had an earthquake in Hawaii. It rattled us really bad. It was about 2006, I think. And the power went out on the whole island for a day. And I was covering that as a news reporter. And there were people that couldn't eat because the fast food restaurants were closed and the supermarkets were closed. And there were people waiting outside the supermarkets going, I don't have any food. and McDonald's isn't open. What am I going to do? They didn't have enough. They didn't have a can of beans at home. When the tsunami was coming last week, my wife and I moved a year ago, and I said, well, this could knock power out. If it's a 10-meter tsunami, we're going to be without power for quite a while. We have food. My wife was so funny. I said, an earthquake just hit Alaska. She goes, do we have enough water? And she was out the door like that. She was at Sam's Club and bought pallets of water and brought them back. So we're looking around and we're going, where are the gas stoves? You know, those little portable butane stoves, and where's the gas? She goes, oh, that was old. I don't think I brought them when we moved. I'm like, oh no. You know, it's when the emergency's coming is not the time to prep.
No,
you gotta have it ready in a checklist. And we found the gas. We had enough, but you want to know where it is and you want to have it at hand. You know, the people that you're referring to that are just deciding to sell their house and move to the country and find like-minded people, they're using their intuition. They're attuned. Something's telling them and they're listening. That's a higher power speaking through them.
That is exactly what they say. And it's not without challenge like everything else. It's not like, especially when you've lived this urban lifestyle where everything you get is from a store and you don't really know how to grow food. So it takes a little bit, but I think it's very well worth it. So we're not really talking about preparing. We're talking about a different lifestyle. We're talking about changing your lifestyle to where you are as, let me say, as self-sustainable as you can be. You don't have control over all circumstances, but the ones that you could have, right? That's really
the thing is, a community is vital because you can't do it by yourself. You can't just go. I mean, if you're the best, you can grow vegetables till the cows come home. But if you're out on a little homestead all by yourself and things go bad, you're not going to do well alone. You're going to need a community.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I want to turn the page a little bit. Usually when people ask about remote viewing, for some reason, most people talk about some big or even bad events that might have happened. What are some of the most beautiful things that you've seen in your remote viewing career? Some of the things that are still with you?
Probably one of the most profound sessions I ever did was of a guy looking at men's suits in a clothing store. Why was that so profound? Because it was the first time I ever remote viewed and saw it as a movie. And this would have been probably 1998 or early 1999. I'd been practicing it for about a year. And I was getting to an advanced technique. And what remote viewing is there's a range of perceptions. Like the first thing you might get is just a shape, like just a 1 second little smear of a shape. And then you go for very low level data, like is this man-made or natural? Is it moving or is it at rest? And then you'll say, well, I see right angles, so it's a structure. I get an idea of a structure and a sound of an engine. So you're getting ideas, you're getting fragmentary glimpses, and it coalesces into, you'll go, okay, I know there's a structure over here and there's some water here, and I hear sounds of insects and a dog barking. And you put that together in a picture, but it's not clear yet. There's an advanced technique where later in a session, where you get to a mental state where all of a sudden an image forms, a little movie happens, and you're watching this little movie. And the first time it happened for me, I was at the TV station during some off time it was on a weekend in an office that was closed. It was very quiet. And I was doing this breathing exercise, and all of a sudden I was like a security camera, and I saw a man in a gray coat walk through next to some suits, and he looked at a suit and he touched it. He looked over here and there were men's shirts stacked up, and he walked by, and I went, I woke up and I said, wow, that was a weird dream. That was like I was watching a guy, and that was in a clothing store. He was looking at suits. And I thought, was that remote viewing? And I sketched it and described everything I could remember about it. But it was this, like watching a surveillance camera clip. And I went, that was really eerie. And so I got feedback, and it was a beaconing target where it was someone went to a place and observed something, and your goal was to see what it was. And the feedback was, I'm at the second floor of a department store, and I'm looking at men's suits. And I knew who it was. And I called him up and I said, you were wearing a gray overcoat. And he says, yes, I was. And at that moment, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I got chills, and I went, oh my God. And I realized everything is recorded. Everything we ever do, say, think, experience, every bit of our lives is recorded and accessible. So that was the most profound moment for me. Like, that guy did that. That was 2 years ago. He was doing that, and in some dimension, someplace in consciousness, somewhere, that's still happening, and it's accessible. So every bit of our lives is recorded, and I realized I better start living my life better, because there's an imprint that's created. The next, really, the one that knocked my socks off was I was doing a blind target, and I had structures, stone structures, dry, arid place, and there's a lot of stone things, and I was being monitored. And what you do when you're monitored, you do a breathing and visualization exercise that brings you to a theta state of awareness where you're almost asleep. And when you just are falling asleep, then your monitor starts looking at your data that you've put on paper, and they say, you saw this structure, can you see it now? And he was preparing to do that. But all of a sudden, I just started talking. I said, there's this stone slab, and there's people standing over it, and there's a body. And I'm going, this is like an autopsy, but it's a religious ceremony. There's torches, and it's lit by torches, and there's all these engravings. And this is like, there's a priest there, and they're doing a religious service, but it's a religious service with a body that's they're interacting with. They're doing an autopsy on the body. It's like they're pulling, it's really gory, but they're doing it in a sacred way. And I go, what the hell is this? And then it ended, and I go, that was really spooky stuff. And the target was the Valley of the Kings in ancient Egypt. And I think I saw Tutankhamun's mummy being prepared. So it's stuff like that that makes you go, wow, that's pretty interesting.
That is pretty wild. And especially the way that you describe it as a movie. You mentioned earlier, everything is recorded, everything that we do, everything that we think, and it's recorded in a fashion that's beyond space and time, obviously, as we perceive it. But have you ever done a viewing on the nature of this reality? Was that ever something you were tasked with? There's so much about the Matrix, the simulation. Is this an artificial reality? An archontic reality? Have you ever done a session on that?
No, that's I'm trying to figure out how you task that, because what you do with a remote viewer is you put their awareness to when you cue a target, it has a primary cue, a secondary cue, a temporal cue. So it would be like the White House, Washington, D.C., current time. So you go to a place, you say what it is, where it is, and when it is. So
that's what you define, but you as a viewer wouldn't know any of these things.
I don't know any of that. You have a targeteer who does that. and all they give us is a number. So somebody gave me H3N2Q3P7, and they've associated that with Valley of the Kings, near past, and that gets me there. So to cue the nature of reality or how the universe was created. Like one of the broadest ones I ever did was, how was the Grand Canyon formed? And that was a pretty interesting one. One of the most, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I think it was in that session, what I saw was at one point I saw the Colorado River, and it was really cool. It was like rafting down the river. I was a drone view, and I was like, oh, this is Brown River in Red Rock Canyons. So that is part of the creation of the Grand Canyon. Then I also saw an interplanetary how can I put this, energy event, like something, the thing on Mars, there's a Grand Canyon on Mars, and that was hit Mars. Something similar happened to Earth. And then I saw that, like, I got the idea of life being seated here. And I saw this being that I took to be the keeper of the DNA, that there is some form of life, some entity that they have a whole library of DNA. And when they want to put life on a planet, they can look at the temperature will be this temperature to this temperature, the atmosphere will have this makeup. Well, we have DNA that we can put these creatures here and adjust them, and they'll thrive in that environment. That was one of the most complex things that I ever, and I don't know if that's true. It's not something I think I made up. Like I never have thought a thought like that. So,
I mean, there's trains of thoughts out there that would speak to that, and historic records and mythical records that would speak to that. I mean, we could go into that another day.
Well, my view on that, if spirituality and religion, and with talks from, I know someone who was part of the so-called secret schools and given the secret knowledge, who reached out to me, who only shares with me things that are published. He doesn't tell me. He says, I don't know any of the secret knowledge. But my view from speaking with him, and this makes the most sense to me, is that there is a God. There is the all, the thing that created all of this, that is the all-knowing, all-seeing, all-encompassing. We could never even fathom how great this God is, right? This is the God that created everything. But within this reality, there are beings that are, and maybe I'm challenging some people's religious beliefs here, but I don't think humans are the apex of intelligence or capability in the universe or the galaxy. And that on behalf of that greater God, they're seeding things to spread consciousness and spread life. So
that's an interesting perspective to add to the mix. We're here to challenge things. We're here to challenge what has been sort of set in stone for thousands of years, but probably isn't true. So I appreciate that perspective. Dick, I know we're coming to the end of this conversation, and you have other commitments, but what is, based on your viewing sessions with your team, what is the advice that you would give to our audience that comes to mind the first or the most, and that you think is most important?
We're coming to the end of a cycle for humanity. Humanity is going to go into a new world, and it's going to be amazing. We will have to adapt to it, but we will still be able to thrive. And I would say, have your friends, be kind to people, learn as much as you can, and be ready for some trying times. But we'll come out of it okay, and we're going to come out of it to a new civilization that will be a step further, and it'll be quite amazing. So I don't want to preach doom and gloom. I think we all know that there's some friction coming, but prepare for it. Love your fellow man, love your family, and enjoy the ride. And we'll come out the other side to an amazing technology. If we don't blow ourselves up with it, is just think of the technology that we've experienced in our lives. You're younger than me, but just in your lifetime. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little conflicted on this. I look at what it has done in terms of harm also to people, to relationships, to our social abilities, and I think, oh, more of this. But then on the flip side of this is just personal responsibility, like you say. Love your fellow man. Take responsibility.
Yeah.
Don't be a victim to it. That's a whole different perspective.
You know what is kind of appealing to me? This is a fantasy of mine. Would be to take like something from the Amish and something from Native Hawaiian culture and combine that in Hawaii. In Hawaii, you can grow stuff all year. I mean, you can grow food, and there's fish in the ocean, and there's pigs and goats in the mountains. And we could really simplify life here and take, that's my fantasy. Half Amish, half Native Hawaiian, make a like-minded community and live off the land. And I'm really sensitive to technology, like Wi-Fi and 5G. Man, it makes my head not good.
Same here.
Yeah.
Same here. So if people are interested in more of your work, the Future Forecasting Group and everything that you do, where can they find you? And what is sort of a good way to follow you and interact with you?
FutureForecastingGroup.com. FutureForecastingGroup.com. All one word. And that's our private site. We have sources and we have material. These days there are things that you can't say in public that are allowed in private, and so we do it as a private site. And we also pay remote viewers to remote view. We found some of the best remote viewers at Daz Smith, Naeem Vendreas, Edward Reardon, but so we're able to allow them to make a living doing that through the subscriptions to our private site, futureforecastinggroup.com. I got to put you in, you'll have a great conversation with Will Lair about El Salvador and what's going on down there. Yes,
please. One last question. I saw this statement a number of times on your channels, is you were intending to help create 1,000 new millionaires. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So what is that all about?
Oh, okay. We're in the transition to a new financial system. It's going to be cryptocurrencies. Not financial advice, but certified financial advisors. There are 300,000 of them in the U.S., and they work for Ameriprise, T. Rowe Price, Charles Schwab, all the stock and all the. They're prohibited from telling their clients about cryptocurrencies. When we started our original site, Bitcoin was like $3,000, $5,000. Ethereum was $200. Bitcoin today is 115,000. From 3,000 to 115,000. Ethereum went from $200 to 3,800. 100 of our subscribers report to us that they became millionaires by following the information. And we're now trying to create 1,000 new millionaires. So we give information, then you can make your own investments and do your own thing. But this is a chance for generational wealth as the money comes into cryptos. Bitcoin is going to be a treasury asset. A number of these things, the financial system uses the SWIFT system, where that's going away. There's going to be all digital cryptocurrency. It'd probably be XRP. So
it seems to be the only one that has the functioning infrastructure to actually be able to replace SWIFT at this point, to have all the pieces in place. Anyways,
well, here's the last thing. The world is planned, and there are overreaching authorities, organizers, administrators that plan stuff out decades in advance. There's an international agency called the International Standards Organization, ISO. They've designed the new digital transmission of financial assets, and it's called ISO 222. So if anybody's listening today, don't take my word for it. Just type in ISO 222 and see what that is, and look at what tokens are ISO 222 compliant, because that's going to run the financial system. And
it just went into effect 2.5 weeks ago or so.
Yep. ISO. You know a lot. You're well versed in cryptos. You must have a little bit.
Well, if I want to talk about these things, I got to be knowledgeable. I got to look at all these things. Otherwise, I'm just blowing hot air, and I don't believe in that.
Yeah, and it's bad manners to ask people what crypto holdings they have. But
yeah, I honestly, if anyone were to ask me, one for me would be XRP.
Yeah,
that doesn't mean I like it or I dislike it or I have a judgment on it. But if you ask me, that's one that I think will be systemic. And when something is systemic, it will go up in value over time.
It's ISO 222. I'm a crypto proselytizer. I could talk your ear off about cryptos. Crypto people are even more annoying than vegans. Vegans, you don't eat meat, you're gonna eat. So, but crypto people, they'll grab you by the collar and they'll go Bitcoin. So I don't want to. I want to try to not be like that. But it's great talking with you, and I really would love to have you come to Hawaii. I'd love to spend an evening with you and play a couple songs. You're a really good singer, and we would have a good time.
Oh, thank you, sir. You know what?
I'm going to put you on the board of my foundation, and the foundation will pay you to come to Hawaii. That's
what a blessing. And I would just come and follow the invitation, even without it being paid for. Hawaii has been on our bucket list, and there's now a number of wonderful people that we would get to visit. So thank you for that. And sir, thank you.
Friends on which island? The
Big Island. So one of our dearest friends is on the Big Island.
The Big Island is so beautiful, and you can still get affordable land there. I'm thinking of buying some land on the Big Island.
Yeah, that's what they did. They went in together and they bought some land, and it's a little hillsidey and beautiful, just gorgeous. And I've seen Hawaii, come on, who doesn't want to go there? So it's definitely on our bucket list.
Well, what you do is come to Honolulu and spend like 2 days here, and you can go out to dinner with me. I'll have you over to my place. I'll show you my guitars. And then you fly over to the Big Island, spend some time with your friends there. You should do it.
That sounds wonderful.
You should do it. Hey, it's great talking with you as always. Thank you for letting me say my thing.
Oh, no.
Remote viewing is, I was so lucky because I had a mentor that was in U.S. Army Special Forces, and they used a form of remote viewing, and he passed it along to me, no charge. He's trained me for 27 years and never took a dime for it, and taught me a very valuable skill. And it's real. It works. I'm not infallible. I'm not omniscient. I have some moments once in a while, and it's really interesting and it's fun.
I have been following along with what you've been putting out there and seeing the things come to fruition too. So I encourage everyone to go over to the Future Forecasting Group website for futureforecastinggroup.com. Also to the YouTube channel. We're going to link everything here in the description and follow along with Dick and the team. It's informative. It's definitely good to have that information, and it's also very entertaining. So Dick, thank you again for a beautiful time and a great conversation.
Thank you for having me. We'll do it again soon, and I'll see you in Hawaii. We'll have a good musical.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Right.
And Inspired Tribe.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in. You know, we love you. We appreciate you, and we will be back with you again very, very soon. Today, I'd love to invite you to experience something incredible that completely changed our lives, and I trust it will do the exact same for you. Now, maybe you have visited a place or walked into a house and just felt an incredible energy, just peace, love, harmony, and you keep returning to those places because they feel so good. Such places exist in nature. Maybe you've heard of them, Machu Picchu or Mount Shasta or other places that are considered to be high consciousness fields. It is where the level of consciousness is literally higher than everywhere else, and people go there to heal, to have spiritual experiences, to meditate, to feel more peace and harmony. Now, our friends over at FLFE, Jeffrey Stegman and Clayton Stedman, have developed a spiritual quantum technology that creates such a high consciousness field around your home or on the go with their mobile service. It is a non-invasive, non-AI technology. There are no downloads or devices that you need. The technology works with quantum entanglement. The results are absolutely amazing. My wife Christine and I did their free trial, and we were just blown away by the energy, the better sleep, the better harmony, and especially the EMF mitigation. This absolutely mitigates those effects and creates this field of unconditional love right where you are. I could talk about this all day long, but here's what I think you should do. Click the button down below that says start my free trial and simply experience it for yourself. 15 days, no credit card needed, no strings attached. Trust me, you will love it.